Have you ever had someone tell you a story and the person that the story is about walks up and overhears and says something along the lines of, right, but that's not the whole story. Or, let me tell you what really happened, right? Usually that person is referring to context surrounding an issue that's missing from the original tale. And in the same way that a friend telling another friend a story needs context, the work that you're doing for National History Day and for every history-related project requires context as well. Context is the cultural, economic, and socio-political backgrounds pertaining to historical events and trends. If you were to think about a spice chart, right, it's all of the things from the spice categories that are impacting your specific event. These things can be shaped by political climate, by social structures. If you're talking about an individual in history, the context isn't necessarily that person's birthday or kind of where that person was born, but instead is the person's background, right? The way that they're raised, right? If it's a female growing up in a world dominated by a really strong patriarchy, that really strong patriarchy is going to probably be part of that person's context. We created this diagram for you. Oh, you can see my quote now. And it's the idea of the broader picture that sets the stage, the immediate context, which is the person or event's backstory, and then the event or person. So what we want you to see is that the event or person is the focus, right? It's your most important content that you're focused on. Then you have the immediate context, which is the stuff that's happening around the event, the stuff that's happening to the event or person. And then your broader context is much bigger picture. It's stuff that's happening in the world that you don't quite understand how it's connected until you dig in and you do some research. We actually have a couple of examples for you from your own submissions from your articles that you guys did. So the first one is about Peter the Great, and the yellow part is highlighted context. So it says, when Peter was a young boy, he went on several trips to European countries to learn how to successfully govern a country. When he returned to Russia, he was prepared to go into power with his brother Ivan V, and they ruled together from 1682 to 1696. When Ivan V passed away from dementia, Peter was officially declared the sovereign of Russia. From the knowledge he gained from his trips to Europe, he tried to incorporate the ideas of Western technologies and modernization into Russia and Eastern Asia during the Siberian conquest. In the early modern period, from 1450 to 1750, Peter the Great became a dominant power in Europe, which affected the indigenous people of Russia by spreading his ideas of modernization. This context, which is the highlighted yellow portion, is really good because it highlights the fact that context is both broad and more narrow. If we go back to our diagram, you can see that Peter the Great and Russian expansion is the small scale information that we're looking at. But Peter the Great and his Russian expansion did not exist in a vacuum. There were outside events and issues impacting it. So on the second level of the circle, Peter travels to Europe to learn. Peter becomes the ruler, right? These are things that happen to him, around him, immediately right next to him. But his broader context, and this requires a little bit of kind of thinking to figure it out, but the success of European governments was the broader context, right? Russia was not as successful as the rest of Europe, and so Peter the Great goes to see what these governments are doing so that he can emulate them. And that's what he learned from them. He then takes that information that he gained from Europe and uses it to guide his own country, right? So you can see the broader context. Even though the rest of Europe is not Russia, what was happening in the rest of Europe impacted what went on in Russia. So some questions that you might ask are, what was happening at the time of the event or the decision that shed some light on it? In what type of society did the event occur? An urban one, a rich one, an educated one, an unstable one? The type of culture that the event occurred in, or how the culture informs your topic the social structures, the state of the economy. For an example of this, right, the broader context that impacted Hitler's rise to power was the conclusion of World War I and the economy in Germany at the time. What was the socio-political background? Was there a war, peace, movements? All of those things are going to impact your understanding of the context. We have one more example for you, and it's actually a direct quote. So those of you who are creating exhibits or websites, this might be a really interesting way to add context through the use of a quote. So the quote is, "After Columbus's discovery of the new continent, every country in Europe wanted to colonize the New World. At that time, Europe was increasing in population and resources weren't enough. Therefore, all of the countries wanted and needed new land. Spain was in the heyday of its power. They had powerful armed forces, especially navy forces, and there was no match for them. Spain wanted the material, aid, and mineral wealth from the colonies." You could continue reading that, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to the diagram. This one has a little bit more information. So you have Spain and Cortez's conquering of the Aztecs as your central focus. Most immediate context is that Spain wanted material aid and mineral wealth from Mexico, right? That's kind of the driving force behind Cortez's conquering of the Aztec population. That larger outside circle is the one that has the most information, right? Europe's increased population and decrease in resources, the desire for the colonies to meet their needs, a powerful army, Columbus's discovery of the new continent and Spain at the height of her power. All of those are the big picture issues that allow Spain to be successful. So you have to really think about what you're trying to accomplish. What context is relevant to your event or person, and what context is going to paint the picture and help you tell the story that you're trying to tell. So today we're going to ask you to really focus on what big areas of the world or what issues in the world surrounding your topic had an impact on your topic, so that you can dig deeper with your context.